Joining us now to talk politics is Suzi Parker. She writes for The Economist, U.S. News and World Report, the Christian Science Monitor, Politics Daily, and of course, she's a contributor to Talk Business. Suzi, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we've looked at these poll numbers that we just had on display here. Let's talk first about the Democratic primary. You got Blanche Lincoln 38, Bill Halter 31, D.C. Morrison at 10, and still a pretty big undecided. Do you sense that this election, that this Democratic primary is as tight as it appears to be?
Yes, I do think it's as tight as it appears to be. I think Halter is gaining ground on Lincoln. I think Lincoln knows he's gaining ground. The undecided is I look at the undecided as leaning more Halter than Lincoln, because since Lincoln's been in office for so long, you would have your mind made up. Yes, I'm going to stick with Lincoln. So the D.C. Morrison card is the interesting one.
Yeah, he is. I mean,
yes.
and there's been, some suggestion, how could his, a virtual unknown be this large? I kind of view him as the alternative. If you want to vote in the Democratic primary and you don't like your two choices, he's your castaway vote.
That's right. If you want a conservative Democrat, as he calls himself, but you don't want Lincoln, the blue dog, the Washington insider, then you could easily go with D.C. Morrison, a total unknown. And Halter is seen more liberal than Lincoln, so therefore your choice would be a candidate no one knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at a number that comes in as high as that, and the fact that you've got Lincoln and Halter both decently under 50%, do I dare say that we could have a 3-week extension of the Democratic Senate primary after May 18th?
We could. I think we could have a runoff. I do think that it's closing in tightly. It could be one of those situations where you saw very much with Obama and Hillary, how Obama was peaking right at the time he needed to peak. That could happen with Halter. He could peak, but then you've got that third party, the third guy in the race that could throw it into another 3 weeks.
It's a complete monkey wrench.
Yeah.
A lot of comparisons to kind of Ross Perot in the 92
Yes.
election is kind of what I hear too.
Yes, and he was at the Tea Party rally last night at the Capitol, and he talked about, he was saying he's the alternative to Blanche Lincoln. He did not mention Bill Halter, but he said he's the alternative to Blanche Lincoln. Yeah. So he's clearly going after a segment of her votes.
So what does Blanche Lincoln do? I mean, she's got money, she's got field organization, she's been up on television and will continue to be up on television, and she's the incumbent. So what's her campaign strategy to, I guess, move her numbers where they need to go?
That's a good question. I think she's in serious trouble. I think that people know her, and I think she is almost divisive. People have made up their mind in a strange way. They either like her or they don't. And she put herself in that middle. She put herself in those crosshairs a long time ago with the healthcare debate, kind of being in the middle on the environmental issues. And so I see her as really having an uphill battle, having to really go after Halter, attack Halter, which they've been doing. Because, I mean, that's the only option I see her having.
Let's change gears. Let's talk about the Republican Senate primary. Our poll this week showed that John Bozeman, 3rd District Congressman, 46% in an 8-person field. Gilbert Baker, a distant second at 14%, and you had Jim Holt at 8%, and then the rest at 5% or lower. Do you kind of view this as Bozeman has a commanding lead, or as the Baker camp has tried to spin this, he's an incumbent under 50%? We just have to get into the runoff.
I think he has a commanding lead. I know that there's always that number, that magic number, if you're under 50%, but that's a pretty commanding lead. It's not like it's, 49 and Baker is closing in. I mean, it's 14. It's teens. So he doesn't even hit 20. So I think it's easily Bozeman has a lead.
So let's stay on the Senate race. This week you broke a pretty big story through Talk Business, as a matter of fact, and we appreciated that. Congressman Marion Barry's son, Mitchell, is actually the organizer behind a 527, an independent expenditure group that is running some anti-Bill Halter ads. Marion Barry has made no bones about his dislike for Bill Halter and his support for Blanche Lincoln. The group's name is Arkansans for Common Sense. What do we know about this group and who's behind them?
We know that Arkansans for Common Sense are incorporated in Arkansas as maybe a 527, or, as someone told me later this week, a 501c4. Not sure if it's a real 527. I can't find any proof of that. Incorporated 1 week to the day after Halter got into the race. Mitchell Berry seems to be now the only person connected to that group. He's on like I said, on the Secretary of State document as the incorporator and organizer. And when asked who else was involved, he said he couldn't talk about that.
He cited attorney-client privilege.
That's right, that he's the attorney, that all he did was incorporate it. So it's a mystery group. They're going after Halter. And who else is involved in it is the big question. Explain
maybe to some of our viewers and listeners why we don't know more about a group like this. I mean, the law just does not require them to disclose at this particular point
That's
in the
right.
campaign.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, at this point in the campaign, it's not disclosed. It could be months before you can get the documents. A lot of times it's just the IRS forms. So it's easy to throw one of these up. If you're in a primary, say you've got 8 weeks to create it and spend some money, and then the paperwork comes way later.
Blanche Lincoln has been the victim of some attack ads by some third-party groups as well. We know who's behind them. They have not been secretive about who their identity is. It's the union groups out of Washington, D.C. But there was an ad that came out earlier this week. It has been pulled down. Apparently, a misleading ad. A Whirlpool worker claims that Blanche Lincoln's vote sent her job to Mexico. As it turns out, what is the case?
The woman apparently was employed by Whirlpool, got laid off, but her job, she could come back and get her job under some new training that she decided she didn't want it. And as a result, you have this another misleading ad in a race that's getting very dirty.
So for people watching their TV sets or riding in their cars and listening to the radio, should they just tune out at this point in time?
It is very misleading. You know, you have you don't really have those ads saying this is approved by Bill Halter and this is approved by Lincoln. I mean, you have had some of those, but now you have all this muddy, these muddy waters. And yeah, I think people should be very careful on what they're hearing and, check their sources and check the facts. And if they have questions about either candidate, go to the web, do your research, do your homework, figure out who these groups are, and, make an informed decision.
I would say, too, it's unlikely you're going to learn everything you need to learn about a U.S. Senate candidate in a 30-second ad.
That's right. That's right.
You also happened to do some follow-up on a story that the Democrat Gazette broke this week on Governor Mike Huckabee and his wife Janet Huckabee moving their residence to Florida. Why is that significant?
They are gone. They are leaving. It's people go back and forth on this Huckabee move. Why is it important? And a lot of people have said since I wrote that story, and I mean the Democrat Gazette did break it, but following up on my story, that it's the tax. Florida has no personal state income tax. Other people have said that it's a big kind of diss to Arkansas that the former governor would move to Florida and take his tax money with him as opposed to just paying the state tax and giving something back to Arkansas.
Governor Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary moved to New York.
They did for her Senate race. I think it's a little different with Bill and Hillary in that they were gone for 8 years. They left. They went to D.C. They were in the White House. And they became these international, they kind of belong to the world. And so, and he did have, build a presidential library here that has given something back to Arkansas. Huckabee, just off to the beach, says that he's going to keep his house here in North Little Rock. Also, that he'll be coming in and out as much as he can. The big question is whether now that he's kind of said adios to Arkansas, how Arkansas is we're very much into our state and we like people to stay here and support Arkansas. The big question is whether any of his endorsements even matter in Arkansas anymore because he'll be voting in Florida.
Well, he still has a nature center named after him, and his wife
and
does
Janet
too.
does too.
So
That's right. That's right. That's right.
All right, Suzi Parker. She is a top business contributor. She writes for The Economist, U.S. News and World Report, AOL's Politics Daily, and many other organizations. Thank you for your time. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We're back with more right after this.